Hello everyone, welcome to Module 2 in Group Dynamics, Social Work 202 unit. This is week 3 seminar and we're talking this week about planning, designing and starting groups. And I'm looking at the PowerPoint slides that are in LearnLine if you want to have a look at them and follow along. These slides are just a summary of a presentation we also had this morning at the Darwin campus. There will be a short film that goes up also on LearnLine in the next week about a presentation and an interaction that we had with a guest speaker, so look out for that as well. We're really looking at planning a group, and you'll get the sense from this short summary that planning a group is an area where there's a lot of work that workers need to do and lots of things to consider in the planning stage before actually starting a group or running any program. Some of the things that need to be considered at this point are the purpose of the group, the context, the type of group that you're going to be running, is there a criteria for that group, how you're going to recruit group members, how big the group will be, the diversity in that group, and is it time limited or is it an open-ended group? In other words, is it going to continue? One of the points, point 5, how will you recruit group members, is something that we will come back to in this unit, and it's an area that often causes a lot of workers a great deal of angst because they do lots of fabulous planning and advertising, but actually getting people to attend groups can be a real challenge. One of the things about the purpose of the group is to really think about why a group is being created. Why does a particular group need to exist? Has there been similar groups before, similar programs? Have you researched those to know or to find out about what has been done before in that area? Never assume that there has not been a similar group or that someone hasn't run a similar group with the population or the people that you're looking at running a group for. Are there other examples, especially, or models of similar groups that you can either read about, can speak to other facilitators, can do some research and find out what else has actually been done in this area? The context for the group or the environment, the relationships between people before joining a group can have a real bearing on that. And also, who might be the other significant people? Do people have connections to? Are there social systems that members are already part of that perhaps you can work with those prior to starting a group? The organisational context has a huge bearing on the type of group and how you will go about planning a group. Number one, first and foremost, is are there resources for a worker to run a particular group? If you're told that you're required to run a group but there's no money to run that group, there are no resources to back you up, that's going to have a huge impact on the type of group you're going to run and how you're going to be able to run that group well. If you have no budget and you're not able to hire a venue, provide food or provide childcare, for example, or offer transport to get people there, or to pay for some audiovisual resources, to pay to have another facilitator come in, those things will all have a huge bearing on how you plan and what you're able to plan. Also, what sort of support there is within your organisation for the group. How did it come about? Who's identified the need for that group? If colleagues or other workers have been suggesting that we really need this group to happen, are they prepared to be part of the planning? Are you able to use those as resources? And also, really importantly, does your organisation recognise that you running a group is part of your job and is part of your workload? Are you going to be able to be given the time to plan and prepare well for the group? Slide 6 is just a slide of some tables and chairs in an open public area. I just want you to think about what is the most appropriate setting for a group that you might be running. And an example could be thinking about running a group for men who may be experiencing depression. Immediately, you would need to be thinking about what's the kind of space that men feel comfortable in. What sort of place would they like to meet? Where are they going to feel safe? Do they want to be identified as going to that group? Should it be a private space? This slide is a public space, and a lot of people would suggest that it's not the most appropriate space to have a group where people are going to be talking about personal issues, where people might be feeling as though they don't want others to know they are there. That's not totally private. You could do a fabulous job advertising and promoting a group, and you could end up with a lot of empty chairs. So the physical environment is really important to consider. Where are the people who are going to be in your group? Where are they going to feel most comfortable? What spaces are available to you? What things do you need to think about? Privacy, safety, access for people with disability, needing to have access to a kitchen. Do you have access to the room for the whole time? Are there other constraints that you need to think about? Is it free or is there a cost? It might be free as a venue, but it might not actually suit your needs. There's also the option to have Skype groups, to have telephone groups where people speak to each other online. There are different ways for people to interact that are not face-to-face. Cultural sensitivities is something that you really need to consider who the group is for and who's going to be participants in the group. What type of mix of cultural diverse groups are you going to have in that group? Do you need to think about having interpreters? Do you need to think about having some leaders from a particular cultural group to be part of the planning and setting up of that group? How appropriate is it that, for example, a woman is a facilitator of a group that may be having men from a particular cultural group who might really respond more appropriately or more positively if there is a man presenting? There's lots of things to think about. Planning for a cohesive group. I'm on slide 10, and I don't want to be quick to move on from cultural sensitivities, because I think that is a space that we could spend a whole session talking about, and indeed people who work in that space bring a lot of wisdom and advice to that, and people often blunder and get things wrong because we make assumptions when we're working with people from different cultures or different language groups to ourselves. The really important thing about being sensitive to other cultures is to ask if you don't know, and to consider using a cultural guide or having a cultural mentor to talk with you as you plan and prepare for a group. Thinking about the size of the group, thinking about who is in the group, who is the group for, and thinking about whether the group is open or closed are some of the other things that we need to consider. Small groups are generally considered to be groups of about 8 to 12 people. Once you get bigger than 8 to 12 people, it's then more difficult to have certain types of activities, to have certain interactions. The advantages of small groups is that everybody has an opportunity to speak, people have the opportunity to build close relationships with others, and people can also easily access time with the worker. If you want a group that is intimate and creates trust, a small group often is a way of getting around that. It can easily be affected though by think group, where a particular culture can dominate or become apparent in a small group, that there's a norm, there's a way of behaving that can become quite strong, and that can sometimes be exclusive to other people. With larger groups, there are advantages, and the advantage the comment that I made this morning in a lecture is that people can come in late, people can sit down the back, people can remain anonymous, people don't need to be as intimately involved, so people can avoid being challenged in a larger group. It's harder for everybody to have a say. There are fewer opportunities for everybody to contribute. So people can get information, they can get what they need, and they can leave without really getting too involved with the rest of the group. Also, in a larger group, there can be absences, and it doesn't matter in the same way that it does in a smaller group, that people really notice in a smaller group, oh, that she's not here this week, I wonder if she's okay. That's more likely to go unnoticed in a larger group. Often with larger groups though, there needs to be sort of more formal structures about how they operate. There's limited opportunity for interaction amongst members, and sometimes the aims and the roles around larger groups can become blurred. Larger group sizes are often more common, however, in training sessions, organisational meetings, and lectures is another example. You may have heard of these terms, closed groups and open groups. A closed group is a group where a group or a program is run for a period of time, and people come to all of the sessions, or encouraged to come to all of the sessions, and others cannot join in. For example, we may be running a 6-week program for young people who are disengaged with schools and their learning has been suffering. They're required to go, they're told to go for 6 weeks, and no one else is going to join that group, and that would be considered a closed group. People can develop feelings of trust, there's privacy, and people will move through the life of the group, the stages of the group together. Whereas an open group is a group that usually is longer term. People can come and go as they please. They can be there for 1 week and not be there the next week. There's often more diversity amongst the members in the group. The structure of the group will often reflect that as well. So for example, at a health service, for example, a group may be being run on a weekly basis for people who are carers, and every week there might be a different speaker or a different presenter talking about a specific topic, and people are encouraged to go to that group. It happens on Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock, and anyone can come and go as they please, so you don't commit to being there for a period of time. That would be an example of an open group. One of the things to consider about the staffing of groups, how groups are run, who runs or who facilitates or who leads a group. There's different ways of doing this. One worker may be responsible for coordinating a group, and the example that I gave of a carers group that meets every week could be the responsibility of one worker. However, that worker, their role is to invite other people to come in and to contribute to that group, to present to that group. But the worker still has a responsibility overall of the maintenance of that group, of seeing that it functions well, that they will be in attendance each time, that they meet to the needs, the practical needs of the members. Another way of looking at group facilitation is to look at co-leading or co-facilitation. So two workers plan together and they share the running and the facilitation of a group. Co-facilitation is a fantastic model where two people can use their skills that complement each other, that bring their own strengths, that have a compatibility and respect for the other facilitator. The group can also experience the benefit of having two different group leaders. Different people will relate more strongly to one person perhaps than another, and they have the benefit of two people's experience and knowledge. The basket of boots is really to highlight the importance of the selection of a co-facilitator or a co-leader, and just to encourage you to think about what would be some of the things that you would consider if you were to be thinking about a co-facilitator, someone to work with you, and what might be the benefits of working in that way. We all bring our particular styles and our particular skills to running any group, and that's going to be the greatest asset that we bring. We might be a worn out work boot, or we might be a lace-up shoe, but we bring skills and experience to a group that can complement the approach that another worker might bring to running exactly the same group. I'm just looking at slide 17, looking at recruitment of members. There are different ways of getting people or inviting people to be part of a group. People can be handpicked for a group. One example may be that grandparents have approached you as a worker, that they are doing a lot of caring for their grandchildren in the community, and they want to get together to talk about those issues. Way around setting up that group would be actually personally approaching the grandparents in the community who are caring for their grandchildren and talking to them about the idea of setting up a group for them. That would be by invitation. You're actually specifically inviting people. There can be referrals, and often in a multidisciplinary service, such as a health service, referrals might be made, and you may be a caseworker or a counsellor, and you might make a referral to a worker who is actually running a group for people who may be living with depression or experiencing depression, and work as a worker. You refer to that group and say, I'm going to make a referral. The group leader will contact you about the details about going to this group. Community notices, community events, social media, word of mouth, radio announcements, flyers, creating visual images, using photographs, so many different ways of promoting a group. So that's a public notice. That's opening the invitation widely to people in a community, or people who have a certain experience, or people who are living with a particular issue, inviting them to come and participate in a group. It's not a personal handpicked invitation. It's a general announcement. One of the comments that I would make about that is, regardless of the most fancy types of promotion that is often done by workers to invite people to groups, one of the most effective ways is word of mouth, and people telling other people, people sharing their experience, people being part of the planning and saying, I will go and talk to my friends, I will go and talk to other parents. These are often some of the most effective ways of getting people into to come to groups. Deciding the purpose of the group will affect hugely how long the group goes for, the duration and the length. And a time-limited group is likely to be around a specific goal, around a specific program. It's not uncommon for a group for parents, for example, who might be looking at sharing some of the issues of being parents and developing some parenting skills. That group might run for 6 weeks. And when people come to that group, the first week, they know clearly that it's going to run for 6 weeks. Ongoing groups exist when there's no time limit. The group's just going to meet continually. And some of the examples of that might be more task groups, such as community management groups, committees that are responsible for regularly running events, or recreational groups. Also, to the nature of the group, whether it's a therapeutic group, whether it's a task group, those things again are going to affect the length of the group. Next week we're going to be looking, week 4 we're going to be looking at group beginnings and the middle of groups. See you then. Bye.